A great big howdy to you dudes and chicks out there in YouTube land. I'm Ralph Reynolds, coming to you folks from North Royalton, Ohio, planet Earth. Today's the July 29th, 2024. The title of this video is Who Are the Jinn? This is a bunch of brainstorming by me, but using all the evidence I can get to try to make my best guesses as to how this might work. So I have 24 slides, so let's get started. Slide 1 of 24. Introduction. Who are the jinn? In my previous video, I described an event that I attributed to pure magic imparted by jinn. This video digs deeper into the enigmatic jinn. Viewers would not be wrong describing my beliefs as wild speculation. But it is the only speculation I've got. Nobody else knows anything about the jinn, and the nature of the jinn has to be an important topic. This video will discuss who are the jinn in the following order. First, I will describe 3 other personal events that I now believe to be jinn-related, with the last 2 of the jinn-related events to have been complete nothing burgers, but still jinn-related. Second, I will analyze retard Aleister Crowley's Whole of the Law, discuss the meaning of the word thou, and describe the real whole of the law for man, not jinn. Third, I will discuss my beliefs about the evil, bloodthirsty, warmongering archangels, especially Gabriel. Archangels are not guardian angels. They're not jinn. Fourth, I will describe my current beliefs about jinn rules, which I consider to be the ultimate example of what is sometimes called tough love. Fifth and last, I will describe the reasons that I am so optimistic about the future of Creator's universe. Slide 2 of 24. 3 personal events. I turned 40 years old on 7 December 1992. Exactly 1 week after I turned 40 years old, on 14 December 1992, I was playing one-on-one basketball with my then 17-year-old son from my first marriage. We played at the basketball hoop at my house in Strongsville, Ohio. It was dark, probably 8 p.m. My elder son and I had played one-on-one on many occasions, but my son was improving. I was in excellent jogging shape, but one-on-one with pushing, changing directions, and stop and go requires a more robust type of conditioning than just jogging. We played up to a score of 15, 1 point per basket, win by 2 points. I was way behind late in the game. For the first time, I knew that I would lose. I was more exhausted than I had ever been, but I kept pushing with as much hustle as I could muster. I remember thinking whether or not I was pushing myself too hard, and I decided, nah. I had the ball at the top of the driveway key, crouched and ready to make my move, and my son was looking directly at me, waiting to react to my move. I felt a distinct hand on my shoulder. I thought, why isn't my son telling me who's here? I relaxed, straightened up, and peered over my left shoulder to see who belonged to the hand. Slide 3 of 24. Before I could see who was there, immediately I felt a very painful karate chop on my right calf that totally crippled me. I was able to break my fall with my arms, but my right leg was unusable. I said to my son, "Game's over, you win." That was the last time I played one-on-one. As soon as I hit the ground, I sensed that my life had just been saved, preventing me from experiencing a heart attack. I immediately attributed the karate chop to a guardian angel. I had heard of guardian angels, but I had never pondered what guardian angels are. I had heard of genies, but I had not associated genies with guardian angels, and I did not learn about jinn until the first two Wishmaster movies about 5 years later. There wasn't anybody else there, but I had distinctly felt a hand on my shoulder, and I sure felt the karate chop that hobbled me for 2 weeks. 5 years earlier, at age 35, I had torn my right hamstring, but the torn hamstring had occurred at a time when I was running full speed, playing touch football, and I had made a sharp cut off of my right leg. Conversely, this right calf karate chop occurred at a time when I had become completely relaxed. Slide 4 of 24. As a result of the karate chop, I endured an extreme limp for a couple of days and did not heal for about 2 weeks. As if to confirm my suspicion about being saved from a heart attack, about 3 months after my karate chop event, I visited a Mr. Hero sandwich shop in Middleburg Heights, where I very casually knew the owner. The owner asked if I had heard about a former high school classmate of mine, Valley Forge High, class of 70, same age as me, a former friend who had walked off a racquetball court and died of a heart attack. As I leave the description of the karate chop event, I urge viewers to focus on my belief that the method used by my guardian angel to save my life was to attack and cripple me for 2 weeks. Admittedly, I'd rather be crippled for 2 weeks than be dead. On 2 occasions, once in my last apartment about 7 years ago, and once in this apartment about 5 years ago, over there, I was just bopping around my apartment, doing normal apartment things, and the next thing I knew, I found myself regaining consciousness laying on the apartment floor with no clue about what had just happened. I wasn't drunk or smoking weed. Slide 5 of 24. In both cases, I was as woozy as I could be. I couldn't walk, but I could crawl to my bed on my hands and knees and pull myself up onto the bed. Once I had laid on my back on my bed, I was comfortable, although I was still as woozy as I could be. In both cases, about 15 minutes later, I could barely walk, keeping my hands against the wall to prop up my body, and within an hour, the wooziness was almost completely gone. The wooziness was the same wooziness I had experienced on 12 September 2006, described in my previous video, but without any drama. My current belief, subject to change if additional evidence is found, is that I did not suffer a stroke or heart attack, but that for some reason my guardian angel had taken over my body to protect me from some threat without even allowing me to know what the threat was. Now that's protection. The reason I included the 2 Nothing Burger experiences is the small chance that one or more viewers may have experienced the same regaining of consciousness with the same symptoms that I experienced without having a clue about what happened. instead of suffering a stroke, you may have been taken over by your guardian angel. Slide 6 of 24. Retard Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley, who called himself the wickedest man in the world, who was also virtually worshipped by occult sheep, who questioned nothing as long as it sounds bad, started the stupidest, most self-terminating occult movement in universe history. Crowley's famous and idiotic mantra, "Do what thou wilt," is the whole of the law. Crowley claimed that his book of the law was dictated to him by an entity I first saw spelled I-W-A-S, later spelled A-I-W-A-S. The first name, I-W-A-S, theoretically could be spelled I was, which is the past tense of Moses' Lord God, I am. The spiritual entity with whom Crowley communicated was a jinn. Contrary to the claims of Islam, Islam relies on directives from Archangel Gabriel, jinn have no free will. Granting wishes is not free will. With no free will, jinn speak their law in first person, from the perspective of the jinn. In first person, the word thou means somebody else. An accurate translation of do what thou wilt is, I'll do anything you wish, anything. Crowley did copy the whole of the law. For jinn, not for man. Crowley wrote the whole of the law for the wrong entity. We're on slide 7 of 24. Crowley was so stupid that he did not understand what the word thou meant. Thus, those who profess their belief in Crowley's law, like Nexium chicks, end up wanting to be slaves. The real whole of the law for man. If that wasn't the whole of the law, what is the whole of the law for man? Jesus said that all the law is just 2 commandments, one of which is the golden rule: treat others as you wish to be treated. In the near future, I will post a video arguing that all the law requires 2 additional commandments: the law of free will, not explicitly mentioned by Jesus, and the law of defense, allowing men to supersede the golden rule, to defend themselves from attacks with intent to harm, and from attacks that harm regardless of intent. Slide 8 of 24. The future video I publish will have a title something like 4 Laws of Creator's Universe. The 4 laws are as follows. First law, law of existence. All men, male and female, are born with authority to enjoy existence and to experience life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. The first law is a rewording of Jesus' first commandment. Second law, law of free will. All men, male and female, have authority to believe anything they choose to believe for any reason at all, or for no reason at all, but are responsible for the consequences of their choices. Jesus did not explicitly state the law of free will, so I added it. Third law, golden rule. Treat others as you wish to be treated. Jesus' second commandment. And the fourth law, law of defense. Men who comply with the golden rule have authority to supersede the golden rule, to defend themselves from attacks with intent to harm, and from attacks that harm regardless of intent. The fourth law is a modification of Jesus' saying to love your enemy. Jesus was correct to not hate your enemy, because hate clouds the mind and leads to suboptimal choices. The fourth law is not hate. It's just business. More discussion required, but not in this video. So do what thou wilt is not the whole of the law. The whole of the law is law of existence, law of free will, golden rule, and law of defense. There's the whole of the law. Slide 9 of 24. On to evil archangels. Over the years, during my personal research, I have developed an extreme disdain for archangels, or just angels. The stories about archangels are pretty wild. Are the stories worth believing, or at least worth considering? I know that I have never talked to an archangel, at least not that I knew was an archangel. But if it's Muhammad talking to Gabriel, or Gabriel sending dreams to Jesus' so-called father, Joseph, or John Dee and Edward Kelly talking to their angel to document Enochian language, or Joseph Smith talking to his trumpet-blowing angel, Moroni, many of these alleged encounters often have one thing in common, called results. Call Joseph Smith Looney Tunes all you want for claiming an interaction with an angel and hidden golden plates. But somehow, this story ends up with dozens of cathedrals and billions of dollars in assets, not to mention Marriott International hotels all over the world. When I witness results like that, I pay attention. Maybe there is something to these angelic claims. Maybe not exactly as they claim, but something is going on. My general policy is to take them at their word first, and then search for other clues. Slide 10 of 24. It has also not escaped my attention that according to the Bible, the default communication method for angels is often dreams. And how did Jacob's son Joseph and prophet Daniel become virtual visitors in their respective realms that were holding them as slaves? Answer, by interpreting dreams. Is it possible that in Daniel's prayer to his Lord God, that archangels may have given Daniel a heads up as to the dreams they were imparting to Nebuchadnezzar? Angels snuffing out 185,000 Assyrian soldiers in one night, 2 Kings 19:35, is pretty impressive. Almost as impressive, if you want to call it that, is the snuffing out of all of the Egyptians' firstborn, Exodus 12:29, after which Egyptians allowed the Israelite slaves to borrow, their word, all of the Egyptians' jewelry on the Israelites' path out of slavery, Exodus chapter 12, 13, and 14. That was really swell for the escaping slave Israelites to receive such, quote, favor in the sight of the Egyptians, unquote, their words, to be able to run off with all the jewelry that the Israelites borrowed. No word in the Bible of when the borrowed jewelry was returned. Slide 11 of 24. It is my belief that Moses and the Israelites also left Egypt with an additional commodity not mentioned in the Bible. Yahweh. Yahweh needed to be carried from his home in Egypt, where he had lived under the name Aten, to his previous home in Jerusalem. Yahweh had been living, if you want to call it that, in the king's chamber in the Great Pyramid, inside his ark. Once the Great Pyramid broke, Yahweh chose to leave town. It is my belief that the Egyptian discovery of a missing god was the real reason that Pharaoh changed his mind and chose to pursue Moses and the Israelites. There are a number of researchers and scholars, including Sigmund Freud, who posit that the plagues of Egypt reflect a remarkable similarity to the aftermath of volcanic eruption. There was a catastrophic eruption of Mount Thera, now called Santorini, around that time. See Wikipedia Minoan eruption. The remains of a giant caldera exist to this day. There are also scholars who posit that the Egyptian death of the firstborn could have been a mass child sacrifice to Sekhmet, the Egyptian goddess of destruction, in an attempt to stop the plagues. Slide 12 of 24. It is my firm belief that the primary source for all of the most decadent evil on this planet started with the evil, bloodthirsty, vile, non-human, reptilian Anunnaki. Religions were not created by man. Religions were created by the Anunnaki, who require sacrifice and worship, worship equaling man's free will. Most researchers call the Anunnaki a superior race. Anunnaki were not a superior race. Ownership of advanced technology by a bunch of psychopaths doth not a superior race render. The archangels were close allies of the Anunnaki Elohim. Archangels served as emissaries to the Lord God, who was Anunnaki. In my first video in this series, I cited Mark chapter 15, verse 38, and the veil of the temple was rent in twain from top to bottom, necessarily implying that the Ark of the Covenant had to have fallen through the temple floor. It is almost unbelievable the number of so-called scholars who claim the Ark of the Covenant had to have been missing since King Josiah ordered the Ark moved into the first temple. Let's start with some obvious questions. If the Ark of the Covenant was missing, then what was the purpose of the second temple? Slide 13 of 24. The ark was required for the Day of Atonement ritual. What did the high priest say to Yahweh's worshipers on the Day of Atonement? Did he say, "Hey everybody, no atonement this year again because we don't have an ark"? I am going to play Captain Obvious and pretend that the Ark of the Covenant had been placed in the second temple. How is it possible that Mark chapter 15, verse 8, verse 38 can state that the Holy of Holies split in two without mentioning what happened to the ark? The silence is deafening. Further, it was extremely dangerous to move the ark. You could get Uzzah-ized, even if the ark hadn't fallen through the temple floor. Yahweh and his Sanhedrin's attempt to have Jesus illegally murdered by the Romans was as chicken shit cowardly as could be. Jesus was tried in two separate courts and was sentenced to death for two different so-called crimes. Before the Sanhedrin, Caiaphas sentenced Jesus to death for Jesus claiming he was the Son of God, which Jesus didn't claim. Before Pilate, Jesus was sentenced to death for being King of the Jews, who was stirring up revolt against Caesar, which Jesus didn't do. Jesus said, "Render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's." Lawfare ain't nothing new. Slide 14 of 24. Imagine this. Yahweh is safe in his living presence, the ark. What appears to be Jesus is up on the cross, and religious authorities are yelling, "Where's your God now? You ain't nothing. Nobody's going to save you." Jesus appears to die on the cross. Instant karma, Yahweh's living presence, falls through the temple floor. I'll bet that was a surprise. A couple of days later, Jesus is walking around alive. I'll bet that raised some eyebrows. Does anyone think that Caiaphas ran and told Pilate? Based only upon human nature, I would guess no. Now, fast forward 600 years. What up with Gabriel? Gabriel, a former staunch supporter of Judaism, as emissary to Yahweh, flew Muhammad to the Temple Mount, the most sacred site in Judaism, and Gabriel then proclaimed the Temple Mount to be the third most sacred site for Islam. Slide 15 of 24. Archangel Gabriel wins my vote for biggest fomenter of war in written history. Of all the sites Gabriel could have chosen, why did Gabriel choose the Temple Mount as a sacred site for Islam? It is my firm belief that Gabriel was attempting to salvage the ark, which was laying exactly where it had fallen 600 years earlier. But with the help of Gabriel, Muhammad was able to not be Uzzah-ized, as Muhammad placed the Quran into the ark. By the time that the Templars discovered the ark under the Temple Mount, the ark was under the spiritual control of the Quran, which is why some of the Templars seem to be influenced by Islam. According to the Mormon website, although Mormons identify their angel as Moroni, in the early days of Mormonism, some identified the angel as Gabriel. A Gabriel identification would make sense, given Gabriel's knack for creating religions to go to war with each other. Given the lack of evidence, I strongly suspect that the likeliest portrayal of Gabriel is Christopher Walken's portrayal of Gabriel in the first Prophecy movie. Folks, I'm just writing down answers to questions that have not been asked. If anyone has better questions, please comment below. Slide 16 of 24. Finally, the subject matter that was promised at the start of this video 15 slides ago. Sorry. And I mean that sincerely. I covered some personal experiences because these personal experiences provided substantial evidence as to the nature of the jinn. I covered Aleister Crowley because, ironically, Crowley's retard Book of the Law unwittingly provides evidence about the nature of jinn. Jinn have no free will. I provided analysis about archangels and Anunnaki to provide context about the challenges faced by the jinn, and will discuss how the jinn respond to these extreme challenges. There are a number of YouTube videos and websites that ask the enigmatic question, who are the jinn? A very consistent theme among the jinn questioners is, we don't know. There is a consensus, with which I agree, that jinn are the same entities as genies, who in popular culture are famous for granting wishes. Slide 17 of 24. I believe that jinn are man's guardian angels, a belief that I have never heard from anyone else. The reason that I believe jinn to be guardian angels is that I have personally experienced what has to be magic, and the entities known for magic are jinn. Admittedly, this belief is based on pretty sparse evidence, but it's the only evidence I have. If any viewers have conflicting evidence, please comment below. We're all trying to figure out how it all comes down. One of my favorite Riddick lines. One entity that saved my life by attacking me and hobbling me for 2 weeks. There's a clue. Jinn are the best friends of man. Here are jinn rules. Jinn are the entities designed by Creator to impart harm to their hosts. Jinn have authority to knock things out of your hands. Jinn have authority to strike and kick you. Jinn have authority to arrange for insults to be hurled at you. Finally, if the attack karma is too large and the attack karma has authority to terminate you, it's your time to give up the ghost. Boo-hoo. Slide 18 of 24. But Rock, how does all of this harm manifest jinn into the best friends of man? Great question, thought you'd never ask. First, a counter question. If you were Creator, which entities would you assign to impart harm? The best friends of man or the worst enemies of man? Using authority of jinn, here are some arrangements that jinn are capable of perpetrating. When two enemies of a man both cast spells to impart harm, jinn are capable of arranging the attacks to collide with each other and wipe each other out. When your jinn knocks a glass of milk out of your hand, yes, your elbow did miss the refrigerator door by 3 inches. That was the jinn who knocked the glass of milk out of your hand. The jinn can arrange for the spilled milk to flow under the refrigerator, forcing you to clean out the dirt and grime under the refrigerator, dirt and grime that had been attacking you with negative karma. When you are attacked by your enemy and you suffer harm, as remedy, the other man's jinn has authority to impart your attacker's thoughts to you. If any viewers have had sudden epiphanies, throwing suspicion upon one of your friends, that could be your jinn imparting that thought to you. Slide 19 of 24. In my case, when pondering how it all comes down, my jinn has authority to search for the greatest fear from my thousands and thousands of enemies, to contact the jinn of the man with the greatest fear, to pass the knowledge on to me. The greatest fear is a beacon to the jinn. Most significantly, jinn have the capacity to minimize the harm intended by the attacker. To universe and the jinn, there is no such thing as a close call. Close calls only apply to man, but there is also a message in every close call. Close calls are indicators of behavior that a man needs to change, or indicators of lines that should not be crossed. Nobody, not even the jinn or universe computer, can accurately predict exact results of future events. There are too many karma connections involved, and each man must be given the opportunity to change his mind. I love the late fight scene in the movie Chronicles of Riddick. Riddick defeated the Lord Marshal, first by Kiara stabbing the Lord Marshal in the back, then by Vanko trying to terminate the Lord Marshal, forcing the Lord Marshal to relinquish his double space at the exact time that Riddick's knife, the knife that Lord Marshal had earlier forced upon Riddick, plunged into Lord Marshal's head. The Judi Dench character, Ariane, exclaimed, "Now what were the odds of that?" Slide 20 of 24. Personally, I have lost count of the number of times I have asked myself, what were the odds of that? What about granting wishes? Jinn were designed by Creator to not be seen and to not grant wishes, because granting wishes is unfair. Nevertheless, there are thousands of individuals who choose to be unfair. If a man sees and talks to a jinn, that jinn is somehow spiritually imprisoned. The spiritual imprisonment of a jinn has to involve some type of voodoo sorcery abomination, in other words, the Anunnaki, accompanied with the ancient concept of royalty. Since jinn have no free will, jinn authority has to emanate from the free will of man, not Anunnaki. Using royalty as the free will hijack method, the free will consent of the governed becomes concentrated in one man, the king emperor. Using their advanced technology, most likely from the jinn, Anunnaki only have to seduce one man, the right man, to do the Anunnaki bidding. Slide 21 of 24. Jinn, man's communications controllers. The word apocalypse means unveiling or a revelation of knowledge. The recent infusion of computers into Creator's universe is part of the apocalypse by giving hints as to how Creator's universe operates. Since Creator's universe is software, the types of functions performed in Creator's universe should be very similar to the functions of man's digital computers right in front of our eyes. When a computer user receives or transmits information to or from another computer, both computers must participate in the establishment of a connection before any information can be exchanged. A connection between computers usually involves a protocol called TCP, Transmission Control Protocol, which includes 3 signals: SYN, SYN-ACK, and ACK. It is my belief that DJINN, as man's communications controllers, establish a similar type of connection for information to be transmitted between men. When a first man establishes communication with a second man, the first man's DJINN sends out some sort of spiritual transmission request, like the SYN. The first man's DJINN makes a connection to the second man's DJINN. Slide 22 of 24. Slide 22 of 24. The second man's DJINN transmits the DNA of the second man back to the first man's DJINN so that the first man's DJINN can calculate the visual image to send to the first man's brain. The DNA identification used for the transmission is measured from the second man's blood. In other words, whatever DNA is in your blood determines how you look to other folks. I have a belief that I cannot prove, but there is too much circumstantial evidence to ignore, that there are voodoo sorcery methods for individuals to swap souls. In this case, I will be talking to an image that sounds and looks exactly like the individual with whom I wish to communicate, but the soul of that image belongs to someone else. In 2 circumstances, the individual with whom I talked suddenly changed attitude to an attitude I had never witnessed from the individual, but an attitude that exactly matched the attitude of someone very close to the individual. I have wondered, not using the word believe yet, if it is possible to hijack the DJINN communications channel between the 2 individuals, possibly by covering the individual's soul, putting a cover over the heart, and redirecting the other DJINN to a different source of blood, maybe blood in a vial around the neck. Slide 23 of 24. DJINN authority. To be covered in a future video, Creator's universe, called Creator's Garden, is software and runs on top of universe software on a platform that I call Universe Computer, whose application is the designed universe Creator's Garden from Genesis chapter 1. There are 2 immutable absolute requirements for universe software before Creator's design was even booted up in Genesis chapter 1. The 2 immutable requirements are balance, karma balance, and free will. the universe software requirements for balance is somehow related to the jinn harmful behavior towards man, while the jinn are also best friends of man. In universe karma math, at a level above my pay grade, somehow the negative behavior is required to balance the karma flow in Creator's universe. Rock, is that the best explanation you expect us to believe? Answer, yep. That's my best explanation. As far as anyone believing my best explanation, I would be happy to consider any other comments below. We're all trying to figure out how it all comes down. Anyone else got jinn rules they'd like to relay? You got to admit, there is not a plethora of evidence. And now for the last slide, slide 24 of 24. Optimism. I am very optimistic about the future of Creator's universe. I know it don't look that way. Nevertheless, I pay attention to trends. The depravity that the world is currently witnessing is depravity that has always been present, but has remained hidden. A disease has to show itself before the disease can be cleansed. The disease is broadcasting its soon-to-be terminated existence to the world. America is the place to be. Officially, we have no king. It is America's destiny to cleanse the depravity, restore free will, and to enjoy existence. The secret government, called Deep State, which could also be called the Fourth Reich, probably has a king, emperor, and more secret agreements and secret treaties than you can shake a stick at. But the secret agreements only hold power in the secret courts of man. The secret agreements have zero power in the court of universe, which calculates the real power from the consent of the governed. Creator's universe has man's back. With jinn math and universe software at the kernel of Creator's universe software, jinn are granting all the wishes Deep State needs to annihilate itself. Abadi, 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 that's all, folks. Thus endeth who are the jinn. I'm Rock Grounds, and it's been a pleasure serving your educational needs. Rap with you later.